In war, some heroes hold rifles, others hold hands. Some wear medals, others wear stains that never wash out. Not all stories are written in history books. Some are hidden between torn letters, folded photos, and silence that never left the tent.
They never ordered me to write those letters. It wasn't in the medic's manual. It wasn't part of my duty. But every time a soldier died on my table and his eyes froze into that last, unanswered question, I felt like someone had to speak to his mother, even if it was just a stranger, even if it was just me. My name doesn't matter. Most of us in the field hospitals were nameless. We stitched, cut, burned, carried, buried, like ghosts in the mud. I wasn't a doctor, just a medic. A village boy who once helped birth calves, now helping boys die more quietly. The war had its own smell. Mud, blood, burnt canvas, and something else. A kind of metal in the air. A weight that pressed on your lungs before a shell ever landed. At first, I thought it was just fear. But over time, I realized it was memory before it happened. The body remembering what death feels like before it arrives. And then came the sounds. Explosions, of course. But worse than that, the waiting. That long silence before the next barrage, when your thoughts turned louder than any gunfire. It started with one letter. He was barely 17. His name was Henri. He died whispering something in a dialect I didn't understand, but his hand reached out, not for a weapon, but for someone to hold it. That night, by lantern light, I wrote a letter to a woman I'd never met. I told her he was brave, that his last thoughts were of her. It was a lie, but sometimes lies are all the truth a heart can take. I didn't sign my name. I never did. I wanted the mothers to believe it could have been anyone. A friend, an officer, even their son's comrade. Sometimes I thought about writing, "He died in my arms." But that wasn't always true. Sometimes they died alone. Sometimes I found them hours after. And sometimes all I had left was a bloody dog tag and a folded letter addressed to no one. Still, I always wrote, and I always signed the same way. A friend who was there. Then came another, and another. Young men with poems in their pockets, locks of hair from girls they never got to marry, photographs, rosaries, tears. I became their voice in death, their final sentence, their last echo to the world. I hid the letters under my cot, in a tin biscuit box. Sometimes I'd mail them through the Red Cross. Sometimes I handed them to officers who didn't ask questions. Once, a general asked me what I was doing. I told him, "I'm making the dying easier for the living." He walked away without a word. One day I received a letter back. It was from a mother, Henri's mother. She thanked me, said she sleeps better now, said she believed I was an angel sent by God. That broke me, because I wasn't an angel. I had failed to save her son. I had lied to her about how he died. And worst of all, I had started to forget their faces. I started sketching them. Crude, clumsy drawings of the boys I couldn't name. It felt wrong at first, like I was stealing their faces. But as weeks went on, the faces in my head started to blur together. Brown hair, blue eyes. Then was it Jacob or Leon? The lines between them faded, and that frightened me more than death. So I drew. Freckles, crooked noses. One had a mole near his left ear, another, a chipped front tooth. Small things, human things. I drew them in the margins of old supply logs, torn bandage wrappers, even on the backs of letters I never sent. They became my gallery of ghosts. And each time I picked up the pencil, I felt like I was bringing one more boy back from the void, if only for a moment. The nurses knew what I was doing. They didn't stop me. One of them left ink and paper beside my bed each night. Another slipped sugar cubes into my coat pocket. To keep me sweet, she said. I think we all needed to believe we were still human. Once I wrote a letter for a German boy. Yes, the enemy. He had bled out in my arms, gasping for breath. He gave me a photo of his sisters. I didn't understand his words, but his eyes spoke enough. So I wrote to a woman in Berlin, That was the day I realized all mothers cry the same way. We weren't supposed to care. That was the first unspoken rule. Don't learn their names. Don't ask about their families. Don't keep their letters. Don't cry. Because caring made you soft, and softness made you vulnerable, and vulnerability got people killed. But I cared anyway. I remembered their birthdays when I could. I memorized the way they laughed when they thought no one was listening. I kept trinkets, buttons, notes, broken harmonicas, and the price of that caring was memory. Heavy, aching memory. It stayed with me longer than the pain in my leg, longer than the dreams, longer than the sound of bombs. You can heal a wound, but memory festers, and some memories refuse to let go. Near the end of the war, I was wounded in the leg. Shrapnel. Irony. They put me on a stretcher and I saw the tent from the other side. As a patient, not a medic. The boy who treated me couldn't have been older than 18. I asked him his name. He said, Henri. I laughed, even though it hurt like hell. There was one boy I couldn't write for. He reminded me too much of my younger brother, the way he rubbed the back of his neck when nervous, the way he smiled before every injection, trying to act brave. When he died, I didn't draw his face. I didn't write to his mother. I couldn't. I kept his name hidden in the back of my journal, behind a loose flap of leather. Maybe someday I'll write it. Maybe not. Some grief is just for carrying. I almost stopped. After the 100th letter, my hand trembled too much to hold the pen. My words started to repeat. He was brave. He wasn't alone. His last thoughts were of you. Were they still true, or just echoes I had memorized to protect myself? One night, I sat in front of a blank page for hours. I stared at it, waiting for it to tell me something. But it stayed silent, so I closed the box, blew out the candle, and told myself that was the last one. The next morning, another boy died, and I wrote again. Years passed. The war became history. The boys became names on stone. Sometimes, when I walk by the river, I think I hear someone say, "Thank you." Maybe it's just the wind. Or maybe memory has a voice too. I still have that box. And when I go, I hope someone opens it and writes just one more letter. Sometimes I wonder if the letters mattered more to the mothers or to me. Maybe I needed them just as much. Maybe they were the only thing keeping the war from becoming just numbers. Each name I wrote was a small defiance against forgetting. If you've heard this, perhaps you'll remember not my name, but the boys I wrote for. Maybe they'll live a little longer that way. And if ever you find a letter without a name, maybe it was me, a friend who was there,